Hello, this is Astro Breeze, and I want to look at Kanye West today. And I think this is a pretty good birth time. This is from Astro Theme. I think it's a pretty good place. So I'm going to go with him being a Cancer rising with that. So looking at his chart, very, very interesting chart, interesting person. I don't know a whole lot about him and his life. Um, so I'm not going to get into any of that side. I did look up a little bit of things just, because I was investigating. I was trying to find his birth time. And anyway, he's a very, very interesting fellow. Like that, he is so outspoken. But look at this. He's got a Gemini son, of course. Of course he's going to be a awesome rapper. A big wordsmith, Gemini right there. And right by Gemini, the sun in Gemini, right there by Jupiter, right there, conjunct. It's pretty close. So that's doing that in a big way, bringing that out in a big way. Well, yeah. Okay, so that's the first thing I see, this big Gemini energy. And it'll be interesting when we look at the transiting Mars. I'll do his transits too, but we're going to just look at a little bit at his natal chart. Well, looky here. Opposite of that, right over here is Neptune. Wow, 14 degrees. He was born near during this time, where Neptune was opposite Jupiter. So we'll look at that in just a second. I'm just going to point out a few things and I'll go into stuff a little bit deeper. So we have this, Neptunian, in Sag, opposing his sun and Jupiter. And it's also in a tight T square to the moon. He's got a Pisces moon. So there's some great sensitivity there. And of course, we have this Cancer rising, more sensitivity, more care and protection of home and family. He takes it to heart. All right. What else? Those are some of the big ones that I see. But of course, we've got Venus conjunct Mars here with this great sex appeal. Whoa! Look at that right there, 1 degree apart. I didn't put the minutes on here because it gets a little cluttered looking, but that's right on right there. What else was here? A nice little sextile here with Saturn and Pluto. All right, so I'm going to stop. I'm going to just leave this up. I'm going to share a couple things. Well, actually, I'm going to leave that up and say, I don't want that. And just talk a little bit about what he's all about. A couple of big things that are in his chart. So he also has the sun square moon. So there's whenever you've got a square, you've got some inner tension, but it's also very dynamic. So his sun square moon is part of that T square he's got, and this moon is getting crunched by Neptune and the sun, and part of maybe being a sensitive artist. Okay, so anyway, we've got the sun and the moon. So here we got inner tension, conflict, maybe in childhood, because you got the sun masculine and moon feminine. So when they're in a square or not a good aspect, there's probably some kind of issue or conflict with parents. Maybe something, it's hard to speculate. And I don't know a lot about his life, but there's just that square there, and that points out to that. So that brings up, those issues, security, anything, with the opposite sex, masculine, feminine, back and forth, but the deal here is to trust your inner feelings and be assertive, to go with what you feel. And I think he kind of follows that. Part of the lesson of that square is finding your own identity. Big time, big time. All right. And then now we've got the moon over there squaring Neptune. So that's the other part of that. That's that T square there. And what's like that? So it's putting a little tight, what would I say, pinch on that moon, the moon being caught there between, the sun and Neptune. So, I thought I could show it. Okay, so very, very conflictive type of energies. You could see that, like if you listen to his, his music, there's a lot of interesting themes that he's written about. He pushes the envelope, let's put it that way. So we've got another tension, with the moon and the square of Neptune. So more tension. So what might begin as an inner problem becomes a door to understanding or door to learning. So sometimes it's like you have to experience it yourself before you bring it out to the world. So the moon, it's sensitive, it's home, it's feelings, and he's got a real sensitive place of the moon being in Pisces. So he's got that wateriness, and then his rising sign, and being Cancer ties right back into the moon. So you can see how this would be a really, I would say, a dynamic energy charging aspect right here, this whole T square in his chart. So, you got heavy moods, you got bouts of depression or ups and downs. Sometimes, you're trying to wrestle with reality. You got that Neptunian stuff and the moon. It's kind of like, I think it's like a sobering, it's like, that moon, that there's deception, that there's stuff beneath the surface, and you might not want to look at it for a while. And it might, there's always the escapism, there's all the stuff with drugs, alcohol, food, things that have that Neptune, but it's because those are there because you're trying to look over the abyss. Your emotions are looking into that Neptunian abyss and probably retching, not liking what you see. With that, it's like, oh my goodness. And then over there with the conflict with the sun. So I think that's a big part of his spiritual emphasis, not only, that sensitive moon and that sensitive rising, but, when we see this tension here, how it all kind of goes back to certain themes. You can see it repeated over and over in someone's chart. All right, what else was interesting in here that I wanted to mention? Gosh, there's so much. He's okay. The one thing, he was born in that generation when Saturn was it was sextile Pluto. So Saturn sextile Pluto. Yeah, what an interesting pair that is. It's a nice, they're in a nice relationship, it's cooperating, that time in the 70s, late 70s, that was a nice time. Saturn sextile Pluto. It's kind of like opportunity there is, if the phone rings or, pick it up, if there's a knock at the door, answer it, there's opportunity. So that's, and sometimes it can reveal itself under the strangest situations, the strangest thing, with Pluto. So it's kind of like putting that authority to look at the abyss and then speak about it with integrity. So there's a very good, that generation there had to have that sync up of Saturn and Pluto. They're heavy hitters, but it's nice when they're in cooperative energy. So I think when I'm listening to him and seeing now what he's all about, he's blending a lot of that harsh stuff with that Pluto with the right thing with Saturn. Saturn is like, hey, you pay, you played, now you must pay. You did this, it's just the consequences. And then Pluto is, looking at that ugly, dark, nasty stuff and calling it out. And again, being, a Gemini rapper, he's had the voice to call out a lot of that stuff. And he was born during that era where that was, easy to do that. Okay, so that's the Saturn sextile Pluto. That was another good one I wanted to talk about. What else? The sun. Oh, might as well. Well, we did talk a little bit about it. We'll talk about a little bit more. The sun in opposition to Neptune, because that kind of ties back into all this. You can see this theme with him. It repeats in a few different ways. So, what did I say? Saturn is in opposed to Neptune. Well, we got a tug of war between opposing forces. but this is what becomes your backbone and your strength. The sun, you got again that masculine energy, that ego, power, pride, I am God kind of thing, right? Well, Neptune is being in tune, it's being intuitive and getting intuitive flash. Uh, Neptune and opposing that is, it's kind of like, it reminds me of like, it's like Neptune, Sun opposing Neptune is like the person who always thinks that they're being picked on, always under the scrutiny. Something, it's like you can see it always seems to be somebody else's fault, yet you're getting the blame, and then now again, he's like, he's calling out stuff, and it's like, kill the messenger, don't call out the problem. It's like, oh, let's just stop the messenger from talking, but that's getting nowhere fast. So, but he has this in his chart, and he's got that ability um to create, to call that stuff out, to show that that obstacle of like, this is wrong. Okay, but then it can go in other directions too, and I know it has in his other, intimate relations. But it's a very interesting, again, it can be get you into delusion, or it can be calling out crap. And that's a, it could be, you know I say, Neptune rules Pisces, and then he's got the moon over there in Pisces. But there's often then, sticking up. Well, in his case, like sticking up for the little man, sticking up for the who's right, who's been victimized. Um, Sometimes, this is also like being inspired by a higher force. When, or they're allowing themselves to receive the higher force. And again, I see this with him in many ways, because of the moon in Pisces and the rising, that very sensitive Cancer rising here. So, and that opposition, with the sun, with Neptune in Sagittarius. So I was lost my train of thought for a second. But being in Sagittarius, it brings a lot of higher energy. That again makes me think of pulling in the higher force. The more spiritual side. Um, yeah, within the theme of whatever you're bringing it in, but if you get a message, it's again, it's coming from a higher place. And if you're doing it with integrity and you're calling out stuff and everybody's attacking you, well, you got to follow that money, you got to follow those roads. So that's definitely something that's really big in his chart. Okay, what else has got? Okay, so he's also got, a lot of sex appeal, of course, with Venus conjunct Mars. That's definitely, well, it puts, how do I say, it puts it out there so people listen to you, whether it's like you're actually sexy or not. It just has that ability to use whatever gender you have to make a presence when you walk in a room, so to speak. It's very intense. It's like a laser beam. So these both, being in the together, they're good, but they're intense as well. We've got that, feminine estrogen and Mars masculine testosterone. Sometimes, the stuff comes on really strong. um, so again, this is, it's got that magnetism, that animal magnetism, that sexuality. But it's also, again, it's not always to do with jumping in the bed sex. It's to do with the natural energy that you're exuding as a person. And when you're on your game and you're speaking with integrity and you're having something to say and you can back it up and you're powerful, that's what it's all about. And I think this is really potent part of cranking out this juice in his chart. So yeah, this is a really cool aspect to kind of high wire all of this other stuff. All right, what else do I see here? And let me go look at this as well. Those are the big ones. I mean, we could talk for a long, long time on all of this kind of stuff. Oh, yeah. But I don't want to go too long. I just kind of wanted to familiar with this because I want to look at what he's got coming ahead in the transits, but also look at the moon. If we got a correct birth time, it's like almost exactly trine his ascendant, to the minute, I mean, the 16, 17 degrees, whatever. Even if it's not, and then we have him in the morning, it's right in the middle of the sign. So he's still going to have a Pisces moon, even though if we go or either early or later. So he'll have Pisces moon. But at this time, it's making this really nice trine to what, how people see him. And it's making this intense T square, which are the kind of all what he's all about. Okay. Those are the big things. Those are the most obvious things. And I think just kind of get you a little flavor of him. Let's see, anything else before I wrap this up? It's kind of a bowl chart. We've got, I mean, not sorry, bowl, I'm sorry, seesaw. What am I thinking of? I'm looking at one thing. It's kind of a seesaw chart. He's got a bunch of planets up here, on around the midheaven going over the top. And then he's got a bunch of stuff sort of on the bottom, even though Saturn is kind of a segue. It's sort of like two different groups. I'd have to look a little bit tighter on it, but he's almost kind of got like two different lives or two different groups or two different things that he has to tend to, and then people that are very famous, have a public life and a private life, and then here we've got above the horizon, we've got the sex appeal with Venus and Mars and the South Node, interesting. And we got Mercury, the Sun, and Jupiter and the Moon all up above here. And then which is the public side. And then we've got all this kind of crazy stuff here on the bottom, all these outer planets. Actually, yeah, if you look at it, he's got the inner planets on top and the outer planets on the bottom. Very interesting. Very interesting. So all this study and all this stuff that is, he's deep. I mean, but he's deep. And he uses behind the scenes time, money, and energy to investigate the mysteries of life, I think, and look for the truth. And and then find it, and then he uses his rapper skills and his money and his notoriety to get it out there, especially now. And especially, we're going to look at his transits, and then we could look at his progressed, and we can see more. But that's kind of him in a nutshell. Again, you can go on and on and on and on about people and go into this in depth. But those are the big things that make up Kanye. I think he's a very interesting person. It's a very interesting chart, and I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you for watching. All right. Bye now.